The sequel that I never knew we needed is probably how I'm going to refer to this episode moving forward. I was a fan of the original USS Callister from Season 4, but it never quite made it into my top 5, so when it was announced that Season 7 would be giving it a sequel, I did roll my eyes a bit. One, because I love the fact that Black Mirror kind of stood against what dominates TV and movies in today's world, which is remakes and sequels, but secondly, because I didn't really feel like it needed one. How wrong was I? This actually turned out to be one of the, if not the best episode in Season 7, and I think it was better than its first installment. With an action-filled journey that was loaded with tension, Jesse Plemons doing what he does best in stealing a scene with the least amount of screen time possible, and it also having an ending that was uplifting but also haunting at the same time. Let's dive into this episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is a review of Black Mirror Season 7, USS Callister Into Infinity, and the ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The ending explained. When it came to the ending of this episode, this was one where the hero triumphed, but there was an element of bleakness to what occurred. Obviously, it is Black Mirror after all. The crew of the USS Callister were pretty much now up against 30 million players that were playing Infinity, and it was now this battle royale type setting where if they were found by actual players and shot, then they'd die in reality. This is because that was their reality, and they were clones of actual people that Robert Daly used in his cloning device. The intention of the crew was to make it to the heart of Infinity and locate a new universe which was isolated, and it would allow them to live their lives as they wished, without needing to hunt for credits in order to survive or having people that could kill them if they stumbled across them, because that was something that became an issue for them. The commentary on pay-to-play in the gaming world was present in this episode, and the constant increase in prices was mentioned there too, something that it feels like is apparent in a lot of games nowadays. So the crew were needing to rob actual players of their credits in order to survive, something which was getting noticed on the game's forum because they'd appear as not having a gamer tag. On the outside, with there being an investigation that was taking place from a journalist around the fact that the illegal and immoral tech, which is the cloning device, could have been used within the game, we saw that James Walton and the actual Nanette Cole went into the game to investigate themselves. But with Walton's career and reputation being on the line, he wanted to essentially eradicate the crew from the game, which meant killing actual people, not just avatars. This again put a question that has been at the heart of this season of Black Mirror at the forefront, and it was focused around if their lives actually held value because it existed in an artificial world. The actual Nanette ended up in a coma following her being hit by a car after arguing with Walton, and we saw that he had a plan of going into the game and getting all of the players that the crew had wronged to enter their party and to kill them. And this is exactly what we saw happening, leading there to be a battle for them on all fronts. However, whilst the crew were dealing with that, we saw that Nanette went into the heart of Infinity, and whilst she was in there, there was a clone of Robert Daly that essentially had the power of God. And he was designed to just sit there and create and build all of the different planets in the game, allowing it to quite literally be infinity, as it was forever expanding. This then meant that the very game that Walton and Daly built was built with an illegal tech at its core, and it went against the Human Rights Act, which is why Walton was so concerned about the journalist investigating it. Once Nanette was in there, she was given the option of saving all of her friends and herself and being able to go to this remote planet on a server that was unreachable for regular players. Or she could have left them and had the possibility of going into the real world and taking over the actual Nanette's body and mind, because she was most likely never going to wake up from her coma. Nanette, being the good person that she is, decided to save her friends, but that was just a test for her. Daly gave her the possibility of both. However, he was going to copy and paste Nanette and not cut and paste, meaning that Nanette would be trapped in Daly's garage for eternity. Something that she obviously didn't want because he was evil, and she wanted her own life because she felt like it had value. We saw that once she resisted the very thing that she had nightmares about, which was her losing her mouth and always gasping for a breath that was never going to arrive due to what happened in Season 4, was something that led her to kill Daly. Meaning that she was able to get the blue floppy disk, which enabled Nanette to wake up in the outside world and for the crew to be outside of the public server. With her killing the clone of Robert Daly though, that activated a mode where the game was essentially going to delete itself. The heart of Infinity had been compromised and broken, and with Daly being killed, it was no longer able to function. When she awoke, we saw that the crew, whilst not in the public server anymore, they were now actually inside of Nanette's mind, meaning that they could see and hear everything that she did. So they were trapped, but in a completely different way. The funny thing is, many of that crew spent a lot of their time watching TV whilst the game was taking place. So it kind of felt reminiscent of that in the sense that they were now watching everything like it was a TV show. Plus, on another level, they were the crew on board Nanette and she was still the captain, so the dynamic was definitely the same. We saw that Walton ended up getting his comeuppance with the game obviously being destroyed, and he was also taken by the FBI. Whilst he was being put in the car, there were Easter eggs popping up left, right and centre during the news broadcast. We saw that the reboot to Hotel Reverie was about to land on Streambury, which showed that this episode took place around the same time as the ending of Hotel Reverie. Thronglitz 2 launched to critical acclaim, which showed that the game clearly ended up making it out of the stages that Colin Rittman didn't want it to get to, and another one was eventually made. We also saw that Michael Callow was referenced, which is the Prime Minister from the very first episode of the show. I also feel like the ending was kind of like what we saw in Black Museum with Jack and Carrie, with her being inside of his mind. I'd say that I spent a fair bit of this episode feeling a bit disappointed that we never got to see the iconic white bear symbol throughout the season, but it did make a small appearance. It was on the mask of a character on the cover of the Space Fleet comic, where there was also a futuristic version of Waldo on it too. My review of the episode. Honestly, as much as it pains me to say it because I absolutely adored the episode's eulogy and common people, I think this is actually the best episode of Season 7. It was genuinely perfect. It had everything you want in a Black Mirror episode and it didn't fail to deliver on any fronts. It had the commentary around the gaming world and how pay-to-play cloud-based gaming is trying to dominate the space. It had interesting tech with the use of the Infinity piece, but also the cloner that was being used, which allowed a clone of Daly to sit at the heart of Infinity. And it also had an ending that made me feel glad that Nanette survived, but there was a cloud of despair that was looming over me because all of the other characters were stuck with a pretty pointless existence. This episode got so many tropes right as well when it came to mimicking traditional sci-fi TV series and movies. From the music that would play when transitions would happen, to the score that was underpinning all of it, to the sound effects and even the design of the set. It was extremely immersive and it fit into the genre in its own right. I felt like tension was at the heart of this episode and I really felt it as a viewer. Knowing that the crew were trying to survive and that they didn't have unlimited lives like the rest of the players made that tension rise to the surface, and you could feel their desire to just live freely. Jesse Plemons absolutely stole the episode that he was in when it was just him and Nanette. The sinister look that he had and the fact that he was going to copy and paste and not cut and paste showed that he was just like the Robert Daly that was on the outside. That whole garage scene between Nanette paired with the crew fighting off all of the players that they'd wronged in the past by taking their credits was a standout moment, and I was on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen to all of them. The colour palette, the sound, the camera movement, it was just so well suited and it added to the emotion. Then, when it hit its crescendo and we saw that the group were inside of Nanette's head as she woke up in the real world, it was such a bittersweet feeling. They were all together again. They were safe from the danger that they wanted to avoid, but not in the way that they wanted. I could definitely see another sequel being made to this, and as much as I was against sequels to start with, I want to see more of this story. A moment that I was gutted about was when the real Nanette ended up being hit by a car and was stuck in a coma because she seemed like such a good person. However, with the soft version of her being dead and the clone, which is the version that the true Nanette was almost inspired by now being at the wheel in the real world, I imagine she's going to be like a completely different person. I thought having the entire game being destroyed and Walton having his comeuppance was a great way for the episode to end, and having the entire game being built off the back of illegal, unethical tech where there was just an enslaved clone of Robert Daly that had the power of a god was a great direction for the episode to go in. I also like the fact that we got to see that James Walton was just as bad as Robert Daly in terms of the way that they were as people. It meant that there was still a strong villain to carry the episode. Honestly, I didn't expect this episode to become my favourite of the season, and with it being an hour and a half, I did worry that there would be a sense of story fatigue, but there wasn't in the slightest, so I'm really impressed. Toby Haynes delivered once again in directing this episode, and it was almost like we never left. With the completion of Season 7, that then solidifies my ranking of it. I'd have Bête Noire in 6th place, then I'd have Plaything in 5th, then Hotel Reverie in 4th, then Common People in 3rd, Eulogy in 2nd, and yeah, USS Callister Into Infinity in 1st. A Black Mirror ranking is something that constantly evolves, and I feel like the top 2 of this season will most likely change quite frequently depending on the mood. So, There you have it, a review of Black Mirror Season 7 USS Callister Into Infinity and the ending explained. If you want to see every episode of Black Mirror Ranked, then I've put the video below. I've also broken down every episode of Black Mirror Season 7 as well, so if you want to see all of them, I've put the playlist there too. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.